Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and in this video, we're going to be doing my January wrap up. And I basically have no good excuse as to why I'm currently still 2 months behind on like wrap ups, considering I think my December wrap up was in February. And yeah, basically, there's just no good reason for it. So let's just get started. There are 5 books that I have in person that I read in January, and then 5 that I don't have. So we're going to start with those ones. And the first one is The Republic of Pirates by Colin Woodard. And this was an audiobook that I listened to. And I was kind of interested in it because it's, like a history of pirates and stuff, except it's pretty boring for the most part, to be honest. Which is not a good thing when you're dealing with something as cool as like the Caribbean pirates and stuff. So basically, this book more or less dealt with three. It was very odd. It was almost like a book of like 3 kind of mini biographies that took place during the pirate age. We have Edward Thatch, more famously known as Blackbeard, Charles Vane, and Hornigold, I believe it was. I can't even remember. That's how like kind of it was. I was kind of more looking for just sort of a pirate history book, dealing with a lot more stuff, I guess, and kind of more of a social history of like how pirates like kind of lived and like kind of their day to day stuff. That stuff is in there, but it's just kind of squirreled away and kind of a little more. I don't want to say hidden, but just not like kind of the main focus. Even though at the beginning of the book he kind of says that's the main focus, but it's not really, I guess. So, like I said, I just wanted something more of a better kind of history of pirate life, I suppose. But I think I gave it like 3 out of 5 stars. So take that as you may. Next one is, and actually, it's a great course that I listened to, and it's Ancient Empires Before Alexander, and the professor for this course, of the great courses, was Robert Dice. And obviously, as you can probably tell from the title, this deals with pretty much every major empire that existed before Alexander the Great, and his, very short-lived and brief empire. Now, obviously, by nature of that, a lot of the empires are going to be ancient Near Eastern empires, which is fine with me, as you can see with some of these here. But there are also some Aegean and Mediterranean empires as well, including the Minoans, the Mycenaeans, and even the Carthaginians, which is really cool. But he does deal with even really obscure empires that most people have no clue about. Basically, like Mitanni, the Kassite Babylonian Empire, for example, gets actually a whole lecture, which is surprising because, I don't even know if I've ever seen a book on them per se. I mean, I've seen like little chapters and stuff on them, because we just don't have really any records that could come down to us about them. Besides basically their name. So that was kind of interesting look at that. Also, things like the Ur-3 dynasty are looked at and stuff. So he does deal with pretty much every single empire that existed before Alexander. So I thought that was really, really cool. Or at least in like kind of Western civilization, obviously. Now, the lectures were a little skewed on the political military side. But I guess when you're dealing with a topic such as like empire building, that's kind of inevitable, and he admits that like up front. There are some cultural stuff, but there is another lecture for the great courses I want to listen to, and I can't remember. I think it's called like Between the Rivers, and I believe that's much more of a cultural history of basically Mesopotamia and ancient Near East or ancient Near Eastern culture during that time period. So at some point, I'm going to listen to that course as well, and I think they'll complement each other quite nicely. But like I said, this lecture did deal with quite a few other cultures. Like I said, the Mycenaeans and Minoans, Carthaginians, all that. Oh, and also 4 whole lectures were dedicated to my favorite ancient Near Eastern culture, the Hittites. So I thought that was really well done. I think he did a really good job with them as well, dealing with how they were very progressive with like the kind of like law system and stuff, I guess, for an ancient, at least for an ancient Near Eastern culture. That was like really cool looking at stuff like that. My only like minor critique is sometimes it got a little dry with kind of like some sort of repetitious like kind of campaigning type stuff, to be honest. And then one other thing that I thought was just kind of funny was he kind of like rags on the Mycenaeans for basically being warmongers, and they were just too much of a like macho society. Basically the Mycenaean Greeks, basically the Greeks from Homer's Iliad, is a good representation of who they were. So that's definitely a fair argument. But then he goes up basically great lengths to defend the Assyrians, and it's kind of like weird because like the Assyrians were literally like the biggest warmongers and just most, I don't know, I don't want to say like violent per se, but definitely the most, let's just say the I don't know, how do I want to put that? Pretty much everyone hated them in the ancient Near East, basically, because of how like belligerent they were. We'll just like leave it at that. So I thought it was kind of weird how he's like defending them, but there's essentially the same thing as the Mycenaeans. So, anyways, so there's that course, and I definitely enjoyed that one. Though I don't think he has any other great courses to listen to. So there's that. Right, next up we have, yes, The Flavor of Wood by Arthur Caesar Erlach, and this was a NetGalley book that I've read, and it sounded really interesting because I assumed it was all about like different tree flavors and stuff, which is obviously what the premise is. However, it was not my favorite book for quite a few reasons. I might do an individual book review on it, but basically, let's just say the first thing that just kind of the style is kind of, I don't want to say irritating, but it's just kind of like, just kind of weird to read. Basically, I think he's if I remember, he's from Austria, but he went to gastronomy school and stuff, which is fine. Except he knows somebody in literally every single city and every country in Europe. He like knows a guy or has a friend or has a girlfriend or whatever in every single major like point of civilization in Europe, and every single one of those people has a connection to all these places, so he can basically go to any bar, any restaurant, any winery, any event. He can just go there with like VIP passes, essentially, like the backstage passes, and get interviews with everyone. And it's just kind of like really weird just reading how he literally knows every single person ever in like any industry related to food, like whatsoever, and pretty much like 10 different countries in Europe. And I'm just like, how is that even possible? But a more important kind of critique I had of the book was, I'd say about half the book literally was dealing with barrels. I mean, not that barrels are bad and stuff, but it was like The Flavor of Wood was essentially just sort of the way barrels give off some of their like wood flavor into whatever is in them, whether that's wine, beer, pretty much every kind of liquor ever in barrels. Trust me, like there's a chapter on like every single one. Gherkins, balsamic vinegar. And each of these things has like their own like dedicated chapter and stuff, and it was like there wasn't that much on like actual wood or anything like that. Obviously, we dealt with like some stuff like tea leaves and everything as well. But like I said, I mean, I'd say about half the book was kind of just dealing with barrels. So, anyways, so There's Flavor of Wood is a little bit of a letdown from how kind of cool I thought this whole concept was going to be. Next up, we have The Field Guide to Dumb Birds of North America by Matt Croft. And this was another NetGalley book. I really enjoyed it, but I'm gonna admit it was just a complete fluff book. Essentially, after like the first chapter, it's a literal field guide with his hand drawn like illustrations or drawings of kind of birds, in North America, with his scathing remarks on how dumb they are and why they are so foolish or just silly or just annoying, things like that. It's meant to just be kind of like silly, like light reading, and he has like a pretty famous website, literally in the same vein as this book. It was really fun. I think I read it in one sitting, to be honest. Maybe it really didn't take any time at all, but it was just kind of, especially if you like enjoy bird watching and feeding birds and stuff like we do at our house. It was just kind of fun seeing his representation of our own birds. And they're like with their like messed up names, and just kind of why they're actually just really annoying creatures to have around. Alright, and then lastly, I checked out from the library A River in Darkness, One Man's Escape from North Korea by Masaji Ishikawa. And this was a fantastic memoir, even though this is probably one of the most brutal things I've ever read. Very tragic, very heartrending, just uber depressing, to be honest. And it's basically about a Japanese Korean whose family moved from Japan to North Korea during kind of that whole propaganda phase in I believe I remember it was the 50s or 60s, when Japan basically kind of just wanted to get rid of its Korean population, and a lot of them kind of were led to believe North Korea was supposed to be like some kind of really cool utopian paradise type thing. And it obviously turns out that it wasn't. And yeah, just very brutal story, to be honest. It's basically his memoir of him growing up, as well as his adult life and even older life, and his eventual escape to back, well, really escape into China, and then getting from China to Japan. But yeah, very, just like I said, just a very brutal story. Like lots of death, lots of just sadness, just tragedy happening like pretty much everywhere you look. Yeah, definitely not for the faint of heart, but it definitely makes you think about how rough, and then like how unfortunate some people are in their own circumstances they might really have no control over, especially in places like totalitarian like North Korea. So yeah, definitely give that a read. If you think you can handle it, it'll definitely open your eyes up a little bit to some of the wider problems like kind of going on right now. Alright, so now I think those are the 5 books that I don't have. So let's just go on to the ones I do have. Alright, first up is Brother John by August Trek, in the subtitle, I don't know why I couldn't think of the word subtitle, is A Monk, a Pilgrim, and the Purpose of Life. I was sent this book in exchange for an honest review, and it kind of deals with, you know, the purpose of life in a kind of an abstract way. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I do have a dedicated video, or individual video review, book review of this one in particular. I'll leave a link to that down below. But it definitely was better than I thought it was going to be. First of all, I want to mention they have really great, like, these oil paintings that were especially commissioned just for this book, and it's not overly religious or preachy per se, if that makes sense, even though part of the setting is in a monastery. Just so to let you guys know, I'm not Catholic or anything like that, so like I said, I still took away something from it, and I'll leave that link down, or the link to that review down below. Alright, next up we have Rome's Last Citizen, The Life and Legacy of Cato, Mortal Enemy of Caesar, and this is a dual authorship, Rob Goodman and Jimmy Sunny. I really enjoyed this book. I don't really like Cato that much. I've studied Rome quite a bit. What do I have? About 2 shelves of. Actually, that's all I have is 2 shelves. Anyways, I got 2 shelves of like Roman history and stuff. I really enjoy the era of the Roman Republic. Obviously, Cato would be the last generation of the Roman Republic, and that's actually like between this one and like last year, I read a ton of books on like kind of like, you know, that era of the fall of the Republic, with like biographies of Caesar, Cato, let's see, Mithridates, and Cicero, stuff like that. But anyways, to be honest, I always kind of thought Cato was kind of just a punk hypocrite, to be honest, which this book does deal with it a little bit, how he kind of was as well. But I definitely see Cato in a much better light, especially with his later years and his opposition to Caesar and stuff. Definitely enjoyed that. And it's kind of like a torn thing, because I actually do kind of like Caesar quite a bit. I like Cato quite a bit. I like Cicero quite a bit. Quite a bit. But like I said, it did change my opinion. So not like a ton, like he's not like my hero or anything like that, or I still think he's got quite a few problems, to be honest. But like I said, it definitely like lessened my kind of annoyance with, if that makes any sense. So that's definitely a good thing to read something that at first I thought I was kind of really skeptical about, but it definitely convinced me that Cato wasn't quite as much of a bad guy as I kind of thought it was. Not that he was a bad guy, I'm just saying, like, you know, in my opinion, I just found him kind of like an annoying character, like annoying, I don't know. I probably just totally messed all that up, but we'll just leave that at that. Alright, next up we have Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers by Mary Roach. And Mary Roach is just a great humorous nonfiction writer. If you guys want to get into nonfiction, I highly encourage you guys to check her books out. She's got like great quotes in here, and I have a great quotes. I am totally messing this whole video completely off the rails, but she purposely puts in like really funny footnotes. I mean, the text of the book is already funny as it is, but she puts in like little weird anecdotes and vignettes and stuff that make it like literally like laugh out loud funny for real. This book obviously, well, deals with dead human bodies. Literally what happens to them if they are just like left to their own devices and stuff, but also who like uses them, what happens to some of them for different kinds of research, like medical research. Then there's like, like crash test dummies, stuff like that, and like the people that work with them. So overall, it's really funny. I read another book by her called Packing for Mars. Really enjoyed that one. She's got a couple other books out as well. I plan to read basically her entire bibliography at some point. Like I said, this was her debut novel. It's really highly regarded. I rate it very well. Encourage you guys to check it out if it's something you like. I mean, who doesn't want to read a funny book about dead human bodies, no less. Alright, and next up is Neil Gaiman's Norse Mythology, which is Neil Gaiman's retelling of all the major Norse myths. And that's essentially what you expect, what you think you're going to be getting is what you get with this one. Neil Gaiman obviously is a tremendous storyteller. I mean, that is what he is. And he definitely takes his own spin. He does stay true to the Norse myths, but he does write it in a very engaging way. Sometimes I thought it was a little bit too modern, but I mean, obviously the whole point is it's Neil Gaiman's kind of rendition of the Norse myths. There's really not too much to say about it. Like in this wrap up, I do have a video review of this book in particular as well. But if you're interested in the Norse gods, Norse mythology, anything like that, you should definitely check this book out. Or if you're even just a fan of Neil Gaiman, definitely check this work out. Even though I've only read 2. This is only the second one. This is definitely my favorite Neil Gaiman work so far. Saying that, having only read 2 books. But yeah, there's Neil Gaiman's Norse Mythology. Alright, and the last book that I read in January is a nice history book, which is Barry Cunliffe's The Extraordinary Voyage of Pythias the Greek. Which, most people will be like, that is literally the most esoteric thing I've ever seen. But essentially what we have here is sort of almost like a modern, kind of commentary travelogue of Pythias' journey from Massalia, which would be Marseille, France today, into essentially either Iceland or northern Scandinavia and back again. Unfortunately, he did write a book called On the Oceans, kind of detailing all his scientific research and anthropological studies and stuff. Did not come down to us. However, a lot of other classical authors did quote Pythias quite a bit, or refer to his writings, or refer to like his studies and stuff, such as what am I thinking? Diodorus of Siculus and Strabo the geographer. Of course, Strabo kind of used Pythias, kind of basically just blamed him for everything and how he lied about everything else. And then you kind of get a feel like Strabo just kind of had a vendetta out for Pythias, because Pythias did a lot cooler stuff than he did. But like I said, it essentially is kind of a travelogue, and you kind of like have a chapter on each like major location that he goes to, and possibly what he might have seen there. Basically, who were the peoples like in that part of, for example, like Brittany, like and like northern France, or in the Midlands in England, all the way to like Iceland, stuff like that. It's really cool seeing like the different technologies that were kind of going on at the time, and then also basically all the science stuff that he was probably doing on his voyage, such as calculating latitudes and longitudes, which I thought was kind of cool as well. But like I said, if you enjoy classical history, this is a cool book. This is a cool little book. Definitely think you should pick up. Or if you kind of, let's see, who else would like this book? Like I said, like it's almost like an adventure travelogue, literally. But it's cool because it's a blend of ancient history and kind of that modern genre. If that makes sense. And I'm really getting into sort of the adventure, exploration type writing. I don't know if it's exploratory, like exploratory adventures, like a writing genre, or I don't know, a genre of books, I don't know. But I really enjoyed it, and if it sounds like something even remotely interesting, I encourage you guys to give something like this a shot, just to kind of branch out into something like ancient history. It's a little dry at points if you didn't know some of the reference points, like the different people groups and everything. But overall, it is a very accessible work, and I encourage you guys to check it out. I had a lot of fun reading it. So there you guys have it. Those are the 10 books that I either listened to or read in the month of January. I'll try and get my February wrap up hopefully done in the next week or two. That way it's not, like April or May by the time I get to the February one. But yeah, just tell me what you guys thought about any of these books or any of the authors. Leave some comments down below. I'll be glad to talk to you about those. And also just leave a comment down below about what your favorite book that you read in January, what that one was. I'm always glad to hear what other people are reading or what their kind of favorites were as well. So yeah, there is that. Oh, well, I was going to try and segue into telling you to subscribe and stuff, because I'm everyone else does it. I should, talk about don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell and stuff, but I just feel really weird doing it. So yeah, I don't even know if I'm going to keep that there or not, except I don't want to have a little spice for just, whatever you end up reading notoriously.